no equal. He's not.
And talking about Mikhail, but also with the secondary, what can you say to Deuce and Garrett after this game? They played good for most of the game, but were beat on some splash plays from Malik and that Liberty offense.
I bumped into Deuce coming in here, and I gave him some words of encouragement, and I just told him, I said, hey, you have to continue to grow. People are going to continue to do this, and then there's going to be a day where it's no longer good to do. And your only thing that you have to do for us is every single time you come out here and play a game, regardless of what happened, get better, get better, get better. And even Garrett, Garrett had lost one today, which is unusual for him. But those guys are good. Their system, they don't change. They're really locked in on what they do. Coach Freeze does a nice job. And you got to remember, he's an offensive guy. Okay, so he's on the cutting edge of what is and what isn't. And I just think the world of him. He's a really fantastic coach.
Hey, Coach, congrats on the win, right?
Mahalo for your kakua.
Thanks. First time anyone said that to me today, so there you go. You were able to play to Garrett's strengths pretty much the entire game on the ground, but there were times where he was inconsistent in the air. How much of a concern might that be going forward, and how close were you to maybe thinking about bringing in Tommy because of the struggles in the air?
I'm not going to get into the decisions that I had going through. There's a lot of decisions going through, but I will definitely say that we need to throw the ball better. I'm not going to – in dealing with quarterbacks and dealing with offenses and dealing with football teams, you have to have certain standards, and the standards can't change. And you can't settle for things. We need to be able to throw the ball better than what we threw the ball. And we'll find a way to work on those things, and they need to change. They need to be better.
You obviously have a strength in Tuck, and your defense, to hold this quarterback and this offense to 21 points is pretty exceptional. Should we expect 24, 21 games more often than not this year? Or are we going to see more of the Gibbs influence of the offense more than the Coryell influence in the offense?
I heard the 24-21, but I didn't hear the last part after that.
Should we expect more 24-21 type games this year, or are we going to see more of the Gibbs influence in the offense vis-a-vis the Coryell influence in the offense this year?
It really comes down to you've got to figure out which style you're going to play, but you got to come down to shots. Like we had a shot with Damian. We missed the shot. That could have been 7. We had the shot with Taj. We missed the shot. That could have been 14. We came back later and, Damian did not run a great route. So that was more him. So all 3 of those shots could have ended up in 21 more points, and now it's a different game. But you turn around and our opponent could do the exact same thing. That's what football is. It's a game of inches. So if we were going to play every game that was going to end up 24-21 and we were going to win, although I might not make it, I would take that. But I would rather us find a way to score more and for the other team to score less.
With the defense, the 4th and 2 on the 4th and goal where Michael, made the play on Willis to snuff out that scoring chance, and then even the fumble with Roscoe and Wax. Are those plays made possible because they're not on the field 80, 85 snaps like they were in the past couple of years?
You got to be careful on how we play it. I was looking at the snaps right now. I thought for the most part we kind of played up-tempo, and I thought they were a little up-tempo too. But when you look at the snap count, it's really not that high. Now, we did milk a lot of clock on that last drive. I think we got the ball with 6:15. I might be mistaken. But, which costs you yardage and it costs you a lot of things. But we've got to be careful with our snap count. We got to be careful with our speed based off of how deep we are in certain positions. We've had a lot of individuals decide because they're not starting to try other things. And with other teams, that's one thing. With us, that really, really affects us. And, hopefully there's going to be a new rule that's going to help us out coming up here pretty soon. That's going to help out a lot of coaches. But right now we have to be extremely careful for our men.
couple more questions. We'll start right in here and then go to the
Hey, Coach. Congrats on the win. You
Thank
told
you.
my colleague Jaron May on Coach's Corner this week you wouldn't answer until after the game what defensive weaknesses you wanted to attack from Liberty. So what defensive weaknesses did you want to attack from Liberty?
Well, oh my God, I'm good friends with Hugh. I don't. Oh, he's. I'll tell you what. I'm not going to answer. But what if you ask me after this? I will tell you exactly what it is, but off the record. But I like Hugh too much. I'm not going to put it out there because he's got a lot more games. Okay.
Hey, Coach. Thinking back to last year, losing to Liberty in this building, what does this mean? What does this win mean for you? What does this win mean for the program?
I think this win for the community and this win for the university and the student body tells you exactly how much the 12th man is valued. There were third down. I'm telling you guys, it got loud in there. And I don't know how many people we had. And God bless everybody that showed up. But it got loud in there. And they had trouble on third down. And they definitely had trouble on fourth down. And when a quarterback is trying to communicate, especially when a quarterback is trying to go from left to right based off of whether it's a run or check the run to a pass, which that young man was doing because he does a lot of that stuff because he is an NFL guy. It was a big advantage. And, I'm not as young as the guys on my team anymore, but they really do like that crowd. They get amped up for that. I know if I was playing football, all those celebrations they do after a good play, I'd be saving my energy. I don't have that much energy to be celebrating like that. The celebrations look like it hurts them more than the play does. But, it was really exciting to have the fans back, and we appreciate the noise they made in the dome.
And last question, if anybody's got it. I'm going to Nate for the last question.
So when, I guess, did you actually tell the quarterbacks who was going to start?
I told them today.
So how did you play that in practice then?
I played it 50-50 in practice.
Okay.
Because I didn't know who was going to play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, folks, there is Syracuse head coach Dino Babers saying that right to the bitter end there, playing at 50-50 in practice, makes the call for Garrett Schrader to play in the game the day of the game. By the way, to our friends that are in the chat, just give me a thumbs up or a yes here. You guys can hear me now, right? I know we had a little audio issue at the beginning. Thankfully, we could hear Coach Babers there, but we're all good now with me. You guys can hear me, right? Thank you, Kevin, and a couple of you for acknowledging that. All right, excellent. So, what a win for Syracuse. They had a 21-7 lead. And look, as you would expect Malik Willis to do, and I thought the Syracuse defense did a fantastic job on Malik Willis. They sacked him 6 times. They pressured him. The fourth down stop was huge. The fumble in the fourth quarter, Marlowe Wax with the pop, Mikel Jones there, and I think those 30-plus NFL scouts that were in the building that were there to see Malik Willis got a good look at Mikel Jones, got a good look at Garrett Williams, got a good look at Josh Black, got a good look at, a number of Syracuse players that are like, we're here too. But that Syracuse defense, which has been the identity of this team all year, absolutely came through after they got embarrassed, frankly, last year with Liberty running for over 300 yards in the Carrier Dome. Not on this day. Now, Malik Willis is a good quarterback, and he's going to make plays. He made some throws there, some tight moments in the fourth quarter, a real questionable 4th and inches call by Dino Babers. I don't understand why he continues to turtle up on these plays, to go cowardly lion on these plays. I mean, you got Garrett Schrader running the football really well. You got Sean Tucker, who has just another fantastic game tonight, 168 yards on 32 carries. So what we saw in the transition, Garrett Schrader, guys, was, and I like this game plan. This is something I said on the radio throughout the week. Ground and pound, physical, keep Malik Willis off the field. Okay, this offense needed a change, and Schrader brought that change that's needed. He can dink and duck. He can run with the football. He can keep things alive. There were some hiccups here. there's no question there were some hiccups. It's ironic that he is roommates with Aaron Service because they had some real snap issues tonight, several high snaps or off-center snaps. Aaron Service is back in there at center, and Dino Babers seems pretty determined to keep him in there at that position, so they got to work on that. But Garrett Schrader just seems to fill in some holes that Tommy DeVito just can't provide for the offense on a consistent basis. Dino loves that screen passing game. That was there. Schrader ran for 2 touchdowns, can kind of bull his way through on some plays, right? He certainly does not have the air attack that Tommy DeVito brings to the offense. Garrett Schrader struggles in the deep passing game. That element is something that just wasn't there. And look, and football today, that's how Liberty got back in this game. A couple of big throws from Malik Willis. You need the air attack. So you're kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul in a way. But Garrett Schrader just brought something to the offense tonight that wasn't there. Syracuse grounded and pounded. They used the clock. They played a physical football game against Liberty, and they squeezed it out. They needed Andre Schmidt to hit that 35-yard field goal at the end, but it was the right philosophy for this game. And now you go into an ACC that is wide open. Florida State is Syracuse's first ACC opponent. Next week, they have struggled out of the gate. Wake Forest looks pretty good. A couple other teams that are surprising, but the ACC looks pretty manageable. And look, bottom line, Syracuse had to win 3 non-conference games, and they did. You couldn't lose to Rutgers and Liberty. And Dino Babers made what could be a season-defining call and waiting here to the last minute, really, going 50-50 in practice, giving both quarterbacks the sense that they would play. You know, I talked to Tommy DeVito on Wednesday. I talked to Tommy weekly on my radio program, and he was talking like a quarterback that was going to be in that game. I don't necessarily think he would reveal the game plan if he wasn't going to be. But he was talking like a quarterback that felt like he was going to be in the game. So Dino played it very close to the chest, made the decision today, kept practice 50-50, as he noted there. So Schrader brings a certain element to the table that DeVito doesn't. DeVito brings a certain element to the table that Schrader doesn't. So at some point, you have just got to make a decision and go with a quarterback. And they're going with the new guy. And that's a big call. That's a bold call in a way for Dino Babers. He's attached at the hip with Tommy DeVito. He recruited Tommy DeVito, the Elite 11 quarterback, everything, but it just wasn't happening on a consistent basis. He'll make a play here and there. He'll make a 73-yard touchdown pass to Damian Alford like he did last week. It kind of gives you an adrenaline rush, and as you're coming down from it, you're waiting for the rest of it to flow in there. So the quarterback decision was made. Kyle said it here, and I'll highlight his comment here. Sean Tucker is an absolute beast. Folks, Syracuse has itself a feature back here, a terrific running back. And, you know, for those of you that say maybe it's blasphemy that the 44 is back in discussion here, I wrote a column about that this week, that maybe Syracuse shouldn't limit itself to just putting the 44 on the back of running backs, perhaps open it up to some other positions. But Tucker's making a play if he keeps on this realm. I mean, 32 carries, 168 yards, 27-yard burst. They needed both, though. They needed the big play, Sean Tucker, but they needed Sean Tucker to grind, get first downs, physical runs, challenge the Liberty defense. And, you know, Hugh Freeze called him that darn running back at halftime. They keyed on him in the second half, and they couldn't even stop him. I mean, this kid has nothing but a huge future ahead of him. And you said it, Kyle. The guy's just a beast. Jermaine says it right here as well. Glad we have Sean Tucker. Michael Antonio saying we need more than Tucker to get to bowl eligibility, and he is right about that. But they have found something in Sean Tucker here. And look, it's a modern offense in college football, and Syracuse seemed to want to be going down that way with the passing game and everything, and that's what they thought DeVito brought to the table. But you can have a feature back. Abdul Adams, I think, made some big plays in this game as well. You can mix it up a little bit, give Tucker a breather. That's what Syracuse has to do to win right now. And whether that's the philosophy that'll carry them to at least 3 more wins and bowl eligibility, we'll see. But Dino Babers is betting his job on that. He went with Schrader. He went with something that he saw that, like we mentioned, kind of filled in the gaps of what DeVito can't do. And both quarterbacks can do something that the other cannot. Maybe they still mix in DeVito at times when they've got to get the air attack going, because Schrader just shows he can't make that deep pass. He misfired on a few passes, hit some sideline throws, hit some screen passes. He can throw the football. So that's an interesting dynamic. But, man, this defense is it's the story of this team. It's the heart of this team. What Tony White has done with the 3-3-5, the aggressive attack that's there. They didn't get the usual amount of turnovers that they get. I thought coming into this game, I said it throughout the week, they need at least 3 turnovers. They got a big one in the fourth quarter. And it was bend but don't break, man, because Malik Willis was really pushing hard, made a couple of throws. And look, how many of you were saying it? Here we go again, right? Here we go again. They're going to blow this thing. Willis is going to come down the field. They're going to score. Last year, over 300 rushing yards and just an embarrassing performance. And by the way, Dino Babers took note of that. You remember last year, Liberty was celebrating in the locker room. They were playing Empire State of Mind. They were taking selfies on the field. That was a huge win for Liberty at the time, their first win over a Power 5 school. They went on to beat Virginia Tech later in the season. They almost beat NC State, and they had a 10-1 season, ended up in a bowl game. But in that moment, that was huge for them. Dino, in his post-game press conference, made sure to say that. I've got it right here. And talking to the ACC Network sideline reporter, saying, we wanted to have that Empire State of Mind. And he said, New York, New York, New York. So make no mistake about it. This team had that in mind. Josh Black brought it up on social media this week, kind of reiterating some of the tweets that Liberty had sent. So motivation was huge in this game for Syracuse. The crowd was great. It wasn't a huge crowd by any stretch of the imagination. Looked to be in the lower 30s. Once again, they had the new light show going at the Dome and a couple new tricks up their sleeve. But the crowd that was there was great. The crowd that was at the game was loud. Hugh Freeze even referenced it at halftime, saying, are they piping in noise to this place? Because remember, last year's game was played before an empty building, which only helped Liberty's cause. Once they got momentum and started scoring in the second half, it's hard to generate energy and get back into it. Not the case tonight. So shout out to those that were at the Dome tonight. Dan says it here too. Shout out to Cody Roscoe. And let me there we go. There's Dan's comment there. Cody Roscoe, a terrific game for Syracuse. We mentioned the stud that Jones is. Guys, I think, and gals for that matter, we've got some ladies in here. I think Jones is turning into one of the best linebackers in the country. I think he's one of the best linebackers in the ACC. I think all those NFL scouts that are walking out of the Dome tonight are saying, man, this kid, he was probably already on their radar, but he's primarily on their radar now. I mean, Willis is going to be a top pick, and he's a talented quarterback. But, man, Syracuse went after him tonight, and they had a great game plan against him. And that's what I was kind of wondering about coming into this game. Willis is a great talent, and I don't want to knock him, but you had played Old Dominion, Campbell, and Troy. I mean, come on. Syracuse, top 5 defense in the country right now. Get after it. The aggressiveness, the physicalness, Jones, Wax, Thompson, Black, Kingsley Jonathan gets back out there, gets some pressure on Willis tonight. This defense has some players, and frankly, Deuce Chestnut struggled out there tonight. They really went after him a little bit. And he's a freshman. He's going to make freshman mistakes. He also had some terrific open field tackles out there. But, teams are going to challenge him a little bit. Garrett Williams was back on the field, which helped for Syracuse. And he had a couple of nice plays. There was one throw right on the sideline that Willis made, which shows you why the kid's going to play in the National Football League. But there's some talent, and there's a mentality and a physicality and an attitude on this defense that is fun to watch. So, listen, that's the heart of this team. And now they're matching it on the offensive side of the ball and running the ball. Sean Tucker. So what they've got to work on now, the Schrader is the quarterback, is reviving that passing game. There was a couple of bonehead calls in this game. Syracuse is 3rd and inches on their own 35-yard line, and they're in the shotgun. 4th and inches after that, they punt the football. I don't know why Dino continues to make these calls on 4th down. That gave Liberty some serious momentum after that, and came that close to stealing the game almost based on that call alone. The way the defense was playing, go for it on 4th and 1. You have Schrader. You have Tucker. You have Jarvion Howard. You've got some bruisers that you can put in the game and get an inch, right? As Al Pacino once said, in any given Sunday, you got to fight for that inch, right? So that was disappointing. But look, Syracuse played the clock well down the stretch, played it to the point where Liberty didn't even have a chance to get back on the field. And Andre Schmidt, who missed a field goal earlier in the game, both Liberty and Syracuse started the game by having long drives and then ended up missing field goals. He made it when it counted, the 35-yarder. Hugh Freeze tried to put the freeze on Andre Schmidt. Didn't work. he got it through, and bottom line, Syracuse is 3-1, and now we'll see what's happening with ACC play. Blake asks a good question here: will Syracuse get Rhino back next week? Now, put Rhino back on the field, either a tight end or fullback for Sean Tucker, and you get even more physical, right? Our belief is, Nate Mink and I talked about this during Orange Weekly, that Rhino will be back next week. We believe. Don't quote me on that as being 100% true, but it seems to be lining up that way. We don't know why he's been out. FERPA regulations, I think Syracuse, frankly, could tell us a little bit more about that, with it still not violating FERPA and privacy violations. But what we were told from Dino Babers, and not being able to say a lot, but what he did say is it's not a long-term thing. Oh, it's 4 games. 4 games is starting to border on long-term, but we should see him back next week, as Victor says here. And now imagine Tucker with Rhino in front of him. Let's go. Chris says the offensive line got some good push tonight, but the center position could be a concern going forward. Michael Antonio notes it too. What's with all the bad snaps? Yeah, I don't know. That was weird because Dino mentioned that they split it 50-50 in practice this week. Aaron Service and Garrett Schrader are roommates. They do have a connection. Service got back at center recently, went back at center last game. By the way, Aaron Service with, I believe, now 53 consecutive starts. That's a Syracuse record. He's going to set a record that might not be touched considering, the extra COVID year that these players got and the consecutive start streak he'll have if he stays healthy. But that's an issue that's got to be worked on, certainly, because there were about 5 plays in this game that were essentially foiled by a high snap, a bad snap, and Schrader having to chase the ball down and not being able to run the play that he wanted to. I'm still not a huge fan of what Babers and Gilbert have generally in terms of philosophy on offense. I mean, it's easy to give the ball to Sean Tucker, but there's still some things that make me really shake my head in terms of play calls. But, that gets pushed aside a little bit when you win a game like this, 24-21 being the final score. And, this was a pride game for Syracuse after last year's embarrassing loss. It's Friday night. There's a lot of high school football and things going on tonight, but if you're home and you're flipping around and you're watching sports, it's one of the few events out there. The Yankees, Red Sox on tonight and the Ryder Cup earlier today. And it's a busy sports calendar, but there's a lot of eyeballs on this game. And Syracuse had to come out and not only make a statement because of the audience that was there and the embarrassment of last year. I mean, come on, man, you're Syracuse. You're at home. You're an ACC team. You can't lose 2 out of 3 times to an up and coming Liberty program. And again, credit to what Hugh Freeze has been able to build there. 10-1 last year, beat Syracuse, beat Virginia Tech, legit quarterback and Malik Willis. They're legit. Syracuse thought that they had scheduled 3 wins. As it turns out, they scheduled 2. But this was just a big pride factor for Syracuse, and they could not let Liberty come in and push them around again. And I think that's what's enjoyable about this team right now is they are physical. That defense in particular has an attitude. They hit. They come at you. They come in waves. The turnovers are more quality than quantity at this point because coming into this year, Syracuse had one of the highest turnover rates in the country. They haven't quite matched that, but that defense is making big plays at big times. The 4th down stop on Malik Willis and then the pop and the fumble. I mean, what more could you ask for with that guy starting to gain momentum and things starting to look like it was going to swing here? Lee brings this up too. The penalty situation improved this week. If anything, Liberty had the penalty issues out there tonight. Liberty had 7 penalties for 69 yards. Now, a week after Syracuse gets 16 penalties in a football game against Albany, just 5 penalties tonight for Syracuse in that matchup. So a huge improvement there for Syracuse. There was a couple out there, but certainly nowhere near just the constant stubbing of the toe that they had a week ago against Albany. And frankly, have had consistently the past couple of years. They've been one of the more penalized teams in college football, but they managed it tonight for sure. Let's take a look at a couple other things stat-wise in this game. Syracuse ends up tonight running 68 plays for 305 yards. It was mostly on the ground where they did their damage. 228 rushing yards on the ground, and that's after Liberty put up over 300 yards a year ago. Tonight, Liberty just 150 yards on the ground for this one. We mentioned penalties, which was big for Syracuse to cut back on that. The Orange were 4 of 13 on 3rd down. They held Liberty to 5 of 12 on third down in this matchup tonight. Just looking at some individual stats here. We brought up Malik Willis and the stud quarterback that he is. Look, you'll take 14 of 19 for 205 yards and 3 touchdowns because he had 6 touchdowns a week ago, mind you, against much inferior competition against Old Dominion. But that guy is just, a highlight film waiting to happen on every play. You'll take that. You'll take pedestrian numbers like that. Daniels with 86 yards receiving and a touchdown. Douglas had a touchdown catch and 62 yards on the ground. Lewis ended up with 59 yards on the ground. This is a guy that had 172 yards against Syracuse a year ago. Malik Willis ended up with 49 rushing yards on the day. Josh Mack, not a huge day. The Rochester native, just 10 yards on the ground. That's how things looked on the Liberty side of things for Syracuse. Garrett Schrader, the passing numbers aren't there. 6 of 15, 77 yards. So they got to really think about that. What kind of passing game they have? How do you get the ball in Taj Harris's hands? He's in the slot now. It was interesting to see Luke Benson warming up on the field before the game after his knee injury last week, but he didn't play. So the pass catching option not there from the tight end position, but they've got to make that adjustment because these players are used to the passing game in one sense with DeVito. Now they got to adjust to Garrett Schrader and meaning adjust in the shorter field. Sean Tucker, your leading receiver with 27 yards and 2 catches, no bueno. But when he's running for 169 yards on the ground and a touchdown, you'll take that. Schrader ends up 16 carries, 53 yards. So it was the Tucker and Schrader show, ground and pound, run the clock, keep Willis off the field. There were a few short possessions, which didn't result in that happening in the second half, but that was the philosophy tonight. And let's jump on the defense here and just look at some of the big stars. And there's Jones once again at the top of the list with 8 tackles on the night. Syracuse had 6 tackles overall. Somebody shouted out Cody Roscoe. He had 6 tackles on the night. Jeff Canton-Arcou getting pressure, flooding Malik Willis, getting him off his spots. He had 6 tackles on the night. I'll tell you what, Justin Barron, how about the young gun getting in there? He made a couple of nice tackles. He gets in on the mix. I thought he had an impressive game. And all told, Wax with 2 sacks. That sounds like a headline. Wax with 2 sacks. Roscoe had a couple of sacks on the day. We mentioned Jones with the big fumble recovery. Wax with the big hit on Willis that caused the fumble that Jones recovered. Kingsley Jonathan and Jeff Canton-Arcou also in the sacks department tonight for the Orange. So, look, football is one of those games that, however you want to put it, game of inches, things can swing on one play or the other. Syracuse got the win they needed tonight, and they got the play they needed to get that win with the fumble, with the 4th down stand. So you start to, maybe forget about some of the things that happen. Those stand out more in losses than they do in wins. And where do they go from here? This is going to be fascinating because this was a season-defining decision that Babers made at quarterback. He knows he's got a good defense. He knows he's got a number 1 running back that someone's going to figure out. A good ACC defense is going to slow him down and make Garrett Schrader win football games. So can Garrett Schrader do that? Because what Schrader has not done has come out and really grabbed the job by the throat in terms of all aspects of the game. He brings certain aspects to the game that you're impressed by, and Syracuse felt like they needed a change on offense, and they got it tonight. But you're sacrificing the passing game for that because he's just not in rhythm. He's not in mode there. It's a lot of short passes, a lot of screen games, and defenses are going to figure that out, and they're going to start to creep in a little bit. Somebody made this comparison on Twitter. I don't know if it's like a direct comparison, but it makes a lot of sense in that Schrader plays a lot like Mitchell Trubisky. Now Buffalo Bills backup Mitchell Trubisky, right? Can run with the football, can make some throws, deep ball not there, big guy, hard to tackle, but there's limits on his game. And there's a reason that he's out of Chicago, and that's a mess in and of itself. Why Matt Nagy thinks Andy Dalton's their quarterback and is just not playing Justin Fields is a whole different topic for a different day. But, as asked here by Lee in the comments, so Schrader definitely has the job now. Are we sure? I think so, right? But if they get in a situation where they can't pass the ball and they got a rocket arm sitting on the sideline, you got to put them out there, right, to make some throws. But, boy, when you keep changing quarterbacks like that, what that does to a team, that's what you got to think about. And Dino thought about that and made that call in game 4 on a Friday after a week of practice. So just goes to show you work in progress seems to be the term for the Syracuse offense at this point. As Dan notes here, clock management, excellent tonight. You got to give Dino credit for that. Always hasn't been his strong suit, but particularly in that fourth quarter, using the timeouts, using the clock, keeping the chains moving, get it down to 1 second. Don't even give Liberty an opportunity to get back on the field. Credit where it's due, because that has not always been a strong suit for sure. Nick notes here that Florida State had me fooled opening weekend against Notre Dame, thought they were back. They've been awful ever since. However, there's still 4 or 5-star recruits on that team. Will always be a tough game. Have to expand our offense and improve each week. Going to be a small crowd in Tallahassee next week. Yeah, that's going to be interesting. On the road now, what you would think would be after, you noted it, after that Notre Dame game, I said, oh boy, that is not going to be a fun day for Syracuse. But there is, Wake Forest is starting to look really good. You know, they got by Virginia tonight. They seem to be the class of the ACC, believe it or not, at this point. Sam Hartman at quarterback. They've played Syracuse tough a bunch in recent years. So that game's going to be interesting. We're getting ahead of ourselves here in terms of, but Boston College lost their quarterback, and even Clemson does not look like the mighty dominant Clemson Tigers of old. That's a Friday night game in the Dome, right? Their defense is really good, but their offense has been struggling mightily. We'll see what they do this weekend. But the ACC, at the very least, just looks a little bit more open than it did coming into the year. And Syracuse has 3 wins. They're halfway home. If bowl game is the measure, they're halfway there. And you look at the ACC, and 3 wins is certainly possible. So it's going to be an interesting road from here with Schrader at the helm, with this dominant defense, with the number 1 running back, and how Syracuse kind of plows the road, quite literally in a sense, going forward here. So that's where we'll end it for tonight, friends. Appreciate you staying up late with us. Some of you, it might be, I saw some people from the West Coast and other parts of the country, may not be just past midnight as it here is on the East Coast, but always appreciate you guys hanging live here on our post-game show. Just a reminder that this does archive on YouTube, and I pop it in my recap on syracuse.com. You can find it on the Syracuse Orange Sports page on YouTube, and certainly available to you on YouTube if you do miss the show live. So we'll be back next week. Syracuse and Florida State is a 3:30 kickoff, so we'll pop on as soon as that game's over. Would remind you about Orange Weekly, which airs on these same channels, live Thursdays at 1 o'clock, but also archived on YouTube in case you miss that program as well. Nate, Mink, and myself, and a host of others talking Syracuse football with you. All of our coverage is flooding the site now. My recap will be up in about 6 hours in the morning on syracuse.com. So you guys get a nice night of sleep and then get up and read all of our coverage tomorrow morning from this 24-21 win. Syracuse takes down Liberty. Shows presented by our friends at Krause Health. Thanks again for hanging with us, all the great comments. And we will talk to you again after the Orange take on the Seminoles and open up ACC play next week. Have a great weekend, everybody.